I'm so pleased to have JHK back with us now to talk about some of the bigger headlines in MMA. JHK, thanks for being with me, and thanks for putting up with me as I kind of try to navigate a sport that is far from my area of expertise. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year, and I'm hoping the holidays have been treating you well.
Yeah, absolutely. You too. I hope everything is good with you and everything is safe. It's been a crazy time over here in New York with a recent surge of cases. I know everybody's dealing with it. So very best to you, and hopefully everybody stays safe and healthy in the new year, including, all these fighters. And we've got a laundry list to get through. I just want to start, if I can, with a prediction from you for UFC 271. I know that part 2 is coming up between Whittaker and Adesanya. How do you break down that matchup?
Whittaker, I think that most people that are analysts and that dig deep into this fight, they're going to look at him and say, will he wrestle? Will he use the grappling exchanges to put himself into advantageous positions? And that's the best, I think, analysis of it, is that will he do that or will he not? Will he stand there and strike with Adesanya? Can Adesanya lure him into another striking battle, get him in his emotions? I think that's what was the key in the first fight, that Whittaker fought emotionally and kind of like mano a mano style, right? And then got knocked out because of that. But I don't know. I think Adesanya is just at another level. I feel like he is at his physical prime as well as his mental prime, to where he's almost unbeatable at middleweight. And I think Whittaker, he is good, and he is a great former champion, but I don't think he's going to be able to match that striking. And Adesanya always has new tricks, and those new tricks always confuse his opponents. And I think that's what we're going to see at UFC 271.
How soon will we know which strategy is going to be more advantageous? I mean, how soon after watching the start of 271 will you get a sense of who's going to have the advantage?
I think the first round. I don't think this fight will end like in the first or second round like the first fight. I think we will see it play out a little longer. It probably will end up going to the judges. And I see Adesanya just being that tactician, that elite striker, and using his feints, using his defensive, wrestling. I think that's going to be important for him, because Whittaker is going to probably push him against the cage and try to take him down there. But Adesanya's physical attributes being so long and linky, that he's hard to take down, against the cage. I don't think Whittaker will be able to take him down in the open space.
If Whittaker does have a chance to handle sort of his length, his lankiness, what is he going to have to do right away to keep a talented fighter like that at bay?
He'd have to use his striking to enter close enough to get into the clinch position, or even like a single leg or a double leg takedown in the open space. I think the open space is going to be the key for Whittaker in this fight. If he could get in the open space and take him down and keep him away from the fence, and just pretty much kind of maybe even make it a boring fight, in the open space, and just kind of use top pressure to win rounds, I think Whittaker has a very good chance of beating him and maybe even submitting him on the ground.
One of the other big headlines that's kind of hot right now here stateside is Francis Ngannou's contract status. Dana White has addressed it somewhat, but what's the latest there?
Dana White said, I believe, yesterday or today, he said that he ran into Francis Ngannou because they both live in Vegas. So he ran into him at a restaurant, and they spoke for a little bit, and he said they had a good talk. But the thing about that is, we never know what's going on behind the scenes. Dana White could say one thing, Francis could say another, but we never know what's going on at the negotiating table. And to me, it's a very confusing situation, because we don't know 100% of the story. But what I know personally myself, I always back the fighters. I think the fighters should get paid way more than they are right now. And I think Francis deserves that. I think he's done enough to get the big paydays that he's asking for. And if he does not, I could see him moving on from the UFC. I know that I spoke to his head coach, Eric Nixick, yesterday, and he told me that Francis wants to be with the UFC. It's the biggest promotion in the world. It's the highest level. He's created his himself there. He's become who he is with the UFC. But I could see him going over to boxing and becoming a star over there. It's never too late with the boxing.
If if Dana does have the leverage and ultimately Francis is put in a situation where he's not going to get the money that he wants, and like you said, he decides to walk, I mean, how does his skill set specifically translate in an arena like boxing?
I think that he doesn't, he's a striker. When you watch him fight, he wants to take your head off. And, that's what he wants to do. That's what he loves. And you take away the other aspects and he could just focus on the boxing. He could sit down on his punches. He could get used to the range and the tactics and learn from one of the best, because he's in Vegas. There's so many talented coaches out there in boxing that they would love to have Francis. Who wouldn't love to have someone like that already has that crazy KO power, and then you just give him the skill set to go out there and build himself up into the bigger fights. And he already has a big name in MMA, and I think that he could build off that.
Because you've been talking to those who are close to him, do you get the sense that, everybody says one thing and does another when negotiations, especially of this magnitude, are on the table, but do you get a sense from the people around him that there is a point at which this relationship will have irreparable damage, that, whether it's publicly or privately, that Dana will do enough to show him that he doesn't value him the way that he should be valued, and, that ultimately will no longer be okay?
I think it all depends on what happens at UFC 270 with this title fight coming up. If he wins, I believe he has one more fight on his contract, or he automatically extends his contract. If he loses, he still has one more fight on his contract, right? So I don't know. I think it all depends on what his management does with Dana White. I don't think it's really Francis. Francis, when you're a fighter, I think if you have management, you don't really want to talk directly to the promoter. You want the management to take care of the business side. That's why you have them. You have them to take care of the money. You don't have to go directly to the promoter. Then you might as well just be your own manager, right? You don't even need those people around you. So yeah, there has been some damage done, I think, between Dana White and his management, but they could always fix it. In this world with Dana White, we've seen him flip and flop a lot.
Is his UFC career hanging in the balance at UFC 270, in your opinion?
I don't think so. I think this is a tough matchup. I think this fight against Cyril Gane is probably going to be his toughest fight. Like just going into it on paper, it is a stylistically a tough fight for Francis Ngannou, but I don't think his career, hangs in the balance in this fight.
All right. Last we spoke, we were talking a little bit about Dustin Poirier, kind of what's next for him. We were previewing the Oliveira fight. Your reaction to that matchup and what you foresee for Poirier moving forward.
With Poirier moving forward, he said publicly that he doesn't want to cut down to 155 anymore. And I think that that's a smart thing. I think he's done what he's done at 155. He's created a great legacy there. His best options are at welterweight at 170 pounds. I think that that's going to be where he rides out his career. He has a few options. He has Nate Diaz, one of the biggest names in the UFC. They've been going back and forth on social media recently. Nate has said, let's fight in January. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think it's too close. They need to have training camps. They were supposed to fight at UFC 230, but Diaz never signed the contract. So Poirier actually withdrew from the fight because of an injury. He only take care of an injury. I would like to see this fight, maybe co-headline UFC 271. I think that would give them enough time to get ready for the fight. Both of them are always training. They seem like they're always in shape, and I think they're ready for each other. So let's put it together. And another option is Colby Covington. If the Diaz fight doesn't happen, because it all depends on what Diaz wants to do. Diaz is so unpredictable. Colby Covington, he's been attacking Dustin Poirier in the media. He's been attacking him and his family, which creates much more animosity. And I think Poirier, he wants to defend his family. So maybe that fight could, come up. They're former teammates. And but who knows what Poirier is going to do. I think Poirier will likely just sit back and see the landscape and wait for McGregor. I think that is the smartest thing. I don't believe he has many fights left in him. Just the way that he's been talking in interviews and just on social media. I think he's just waiting for that one more big payday, and he goes, out on with a bang. and then focuses on his charity and just being a good human being.
Is that too long of a layoff to wait? Is that too risky?
I don't think so, because we don't even know when Conor McGregor is coming back, so you could sit back and wait for him, and it would be a pay-per-view on any card. It's a pay-per-view main event, no matter what. Conor McGregor will not do any less than that, and Dustin Poirier knows that. And Dustin Poirier, everybody wants to see what's going to happen in that fight. So there's a lot of interest no matter when it happens.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And then what's next for Oliveira now?
With Oliveira, he's in an interesting position, right? He's the champion. He's undisputed now. People ahead of the Poirier fight are like, Poirier's the uncrowned champion. Oliveira goes in there, and and even myself, I thought that Poirier was going to beat Oliveira, and he shut everybody up, shut me up. I'm on the Oliveira train. His next challenge, he has a few options. He has Justin Gaethje, who just recently earned a title shot by going 3-round war with Michael Chandler, and I think he deserves it. But in this world of prize fighting, there's a difference between deserving something and getting something, right? And Conor McGregor, he's put his name in the basket, saying like, I want to face Oliveira when I come back. And Dana White has even said that Conor will fight anybody, and he does get special treatment because he's special. And the UFC recently announced that they will probably have a pay-per-view event, UFC 274 in Rio, Brazil. And Oliveira has, shown interest in fighting on that, maybe main eventing it against Conor McGregor. I don't think he's going to be back that soon. So we got to look at the winner of Islam and Dariush possibly, but Justin Gaethje will probably get the next shot.
Yeah, before we move on, just give me a quick thought on Islam and Dariush. Who has the edge in that matchup?
I think Islam has the edge, but a lot of people are underestimating what Beneil Dariush has done. He's been in the UFC for many, many years. This is his actually second run towards the title. He's very similar to what Oliveira did. Oliveira had a run towards the title, and he, had some pitfalls. Beneil, the same thing, and he came back, improved, got better, beat the best guys, and now he's on the verge of another, title shot. And but Islam, he's just a machine. Like, he's just getting better. He just has that crazy grappling base that it's hard to catch up with. And then now he's adding in the striking with it. His striking is, getting towards that elite level, and he's becoming a much more complete fighter. But Beneil, he has that X factor, man. He goes in there and somehow he ends up finishing fights, even though he's losing. But I'll give the edge to Islam. I think Islam is better at controlling fights. And if he can control Dariush and keep away from those wild exchanges, he should get this win.
What's harder to defend, the grappling style or somebody that's a really talented striker?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it's the grappling style, because when a guy like Islam or a Habib or other great wrestlers, when they go in there and they get you to the ground and then they're just on you like a blanket, right? One of those heavy winter blankets, you get under there, you're warm, for us it's great, but for a fighter, it's not so great, right? So I think that feeling is not so good, and it drains you. With a striker, there's always that chance where you can land that, that lucky punch or that lucky kick in a way and knock your opponent out. But with grappling, it's everything slowed down, and those guys are really, really good at that.
Yeah, momentum swing seems like it might be easier with the striking style than when you've got that gravity blanket that you never asked for. I just want to wrap up with Jake Paul, obviously a huge name, even for a novice like me that's not really inside the sport, KOing Tyron Woodley. And then, that was obviously a huge rematch. After that, I think Paul started calling out all kinds of MMA fighters. I mean, what was the response like from other MMA fighters? I know that he's been invited into the octagon since that time. Good idea? Bad idea?
But that's a bad idea. He should never go fight in the octagon. He should stay where he is with boxing. I think he's slowly becoming a talented boxer. To be honest with you, like, a lot of people don't like that opinion, but he is. He's been trained by some really good, coaches. His sparring partners are good boxers, and he's shown that he can go out there and knock out, somebody like really devastatingly. That was a devastating knockout. Like, he fell on his face. Tyron Woodley, is going to be a meme for the rest of his life because of Jake Paul. And Jake Paul still has that stigma of he's a Disney kid or he's a YouTuber. But I think we should get away from that now. I think we should get away from that and say, like, this guy is a boxer. He knows how to box. And him calling out MMA fighters, that just makes other MMA fighters call him out. You know what I mean? So there's like 1,000 MMA fighters online calling out Jake Paul and wanting to fight him. And they know that there's a payday with that. And I think that, you know, why would you not chase the payday? Why would you not fight Jake Paul? You know, if he's calling you out, I think you should go over there and test yourself. And if you embarrass yourself, that means your boxing is not that good. You know what I mean? You might have been confident, but Jake Paul, man, he's doing incredible things. And I think people should start to recognize him as a star. You know what I mean? Not an elite boxer. There's a difference. There's a star in the sport, and then there's elite level fighters. He's not an elite level fighter, but he can box, and I think he's a star.
Well, that's an interesting take, because I remember, I mean, I'm testing my memory here now in the sport, but he had a pretty big fight on DAZN, I think, when he was kind of coming around to boxing. And I think at the time, everybody was really considering him a joke. Like, what's this YouTube guy doing here? Whatever, he's not talented. This is a pay grab. This is publicity, whatever it is. And like you said, I mean, to knock anybody out in the sport is such an accomplishment, and to do it that way is such an accomplishment. When for you did you go, man, like, Jake Paul is more substance than everybody thinks. He's a harder worker than everybody thinks. I mean, was it this most recent rematch, or was it actually long before that?
It was the first Tyron Woodley fight. I think that fight showed, you know, that he is serious about what he's doing. He takes it like a athlete. He takes it like a fighter. You know what I mean? Like he's not just there for you know, his 15 minutes of fame, so to say. He's there to become a serious boxer, and he's smart too, because he's only a couple fights deep into his boxing career, but he's very selective of who he's boxing. You know, you don't want to enter a career and then in your third fight some like killer in your division. That's not what you want to do. You want to take the Sean O'Malley approach. Sean O'Malley is doing it in the UFC right now, exactly what Jake Paul is doing. He's being very selective of who he fights, and he's getting that experience. And then that experience, you know, adds up to more confidence in the ring or the cage. And he's doing it beautifully. You know, calling out these fighters like Jorge Masvidal, you know, or Nate Diaz. He's doing that for a reason, because he knows he can. You know, he thinks in his mind, he's confident enough that he could go in there and beat these guys. And a lot of those guys, you know, they're not boxers. So I would be confident too.
JHK, this was great stuff. Thank you so much for being with us and getting us up to speed on everything that's happening in your world. We appreciate it.
No problem. You know, happy holidays again. And, you know, a big 2022 for you guys.
You too. Thanks.